in a position where we can discuss a very simple program. In this video, this complements the sheet 1D. It's very short, but the concept and the arrangement is actually very, very critical. We'll go through a worked example in a second, but a basic simple program has essentially three parts. An input. So in our case, we're getting stuff from the console, and depending on the type of information, you need to use the correct next int or next line, etc. If it's etc., you need to use that correct mechanism to get your input. You're storing it in a variable. Typically, variables will be present in your simple program because they will store input data, which you can then go and process. So let's say that you're trying to calculate the sum of two numbers. You get the input, you store them in the variables, you add them together, and then obviously the last stage is output. So that's a very simple model. It's one I imagine you're not unfamiliar with, but it's very crucial that you keep that in mind, because a lot of what we do in programming can always return to this very simple model. What are we inputting? What are the variables holding the input data and any other data we need received from somewhere else? What's the processes we're trying to do on that data or with that data? And what do we want to output to the console? So let's build a very, very simple program. But back to our public static main in our program. If you're not sure how I got there, go back to the previous videos in this sequence, and let's pull it together. So we've got at the top of this our import statement. So we need that import object, not input object, sorry, the input object, which will receive which will be the object which controls receiving data. We use the new keyword. We say a scanner. Look at the syntax, it's peculiar. You just need to learn this. Inside it, we put system.in. Don't ask at this stage or worry about the details. You know, why is that word the same as that word? What's going on inside the bracket? We will come to those concepts later. We don't want to get completely caught up with. So we've created our input object. We're going to ask someone to output a whole number. So let's say, please enter your age. Okay, put a little bit of a prompt, semicolon, end of line. That will then we're going to receive that value. So if we just call it value for the sake of it, right? Keep it simple. We use the input object, press dot. What type of information is it? It's an int, so it's next int, semicolon. So that will receive it. Now what we'd like to do is calculate what year you were born. Now this is obviously going to be slightly inaccurate because we're not taking months into consideration, so it's going to be rough. The current year, which we need to store, in order to do our calculation, and I'm going to store it as 20. When I wrote this, it was 2019, but now 2021. Okay, so that's going to store a value. Value is not going to change, and we can talk about constants later on. Typically, what we like to do is declare constant values with capitals. Let's have a look at what the complaint is here. Typo, rename to split into declaration, convert to atomic. No, it's not worry about any of that. But for the time being, we will come to all those other concepts later. Some of you might have encountered that in previous things I've said. So we define the current year in that way. And notice, even if I'm just using that number 2021, if I want to store it in a variable, I still have to give it its data type. Right, but we want to calculate. So say you enter 53, I've got to take it away from the current year to get me your birth year. But if I'm going to store the result in your birth year, I need to create a variable, birth year, which is going to store it. Okay, notice I'm using camel case, and for the Java, I'm going to encourage camel case because I want a consistent set of notation and stylistic. So that's the convention we're going to be sticking through both the notes, and you'll hear me say this again. So let's work the calculation out. Well, birth year is whatever the current year is minus that value you pass in. Okay, notice this is slightly in grey, and that's a very clever thing that IntelliJ does. If you're not doing anything more with variables, it tends to spot that for you. And let's output the result. Right, print line. Now I'm typing everything in, and you'll notice sometimes you mistype. Right, watch out for the environment and take advantage of this feature here. It's called IntelliSense. But if you type the first word in, hit press dot and type in O, you'll notice it'll pick out. Then hit the tab characters even faster. Print, go down, select the one you want, hit tab, you've got it, right? And it even pops a semicolon in for you. So what am I going to put here? I'm going to say you were born in space plus sign, and then let's put the birth year. And again, as I say, no months are being given here, so actually it's not necessarily going to be that accurate. Let's run it, run the main, and let's see what happens. Here we go. Please enter your age. It says down here, let's say 53, and hit enter. You were born in 1968. I know that's inaccurate because I was actually born in 1967. And so the month difference does make a difference. So you could enhance this as an exercise. You could enhance it to give more precision, but I would do it with only integers. Use months for integers rather than use a different date time data type, and that will give you more precision. That's a nice exercise to do. What you'll find is that after this exercise, we move into a bunch of exercises and problems to do for this whole week. So play with this example, and I hope that it starts to make sense.